Hello and welcome to the Awards Intelligence 6-Minute webinar. I'm Erin Sunday, Industry Analyst, and in this edition, I'm going to discuss the impacts of the newly revised fuel economy rules that were announced at the end of March. They greatly reduce the stringency in future targets, making electrified vehicles less necessary in meeting mandates. The new fuel economy policy is called the Safer, Affordable, Fuel-Efficient Vehicles Rule. The stringency of the targets will now increase 1.5% each model year through 2026, instead of the approximately 5% through 2025 as in the original policy. That means that the industry goal of 40.4 mpg compared to 46.7. The agencies originally wanted to remove credit flexibilities like off-cycle or air conditioning credits, but those will continue. And while not part of this rule, the agencies decided to no longer allow California and its partner states to set their own CO2 standards. California had agreed to the 5% gain to be able to maintain a national program, but it finds that the 1.5% is detrimental to its environmental goals. The agencies say that the benefit of a lower target would come from newer vehicles being around $1,000 cheaper, since OEMs won't have to equip as much advanced technology. The cheaper cars would then boost demand by 2.7 million units over the regulatory period, meaning that even more older cars would come off the road, being replaced by those with lower tailpipe emissions and more safety features. There is a lot of opposition to this rule, however. California, along with 22 states, the District of Columbia, and some cities, have united to fight the rule at the Supreme Court level. They believe that the analytical support to this decision was biased and faulty, and the true impacts are misstated and are actually harmful to the environment and society. A case for California to regain its right for stricter emissions rules was already underway, and both these court cases could take years to resolve. Also consider that we're approaching a presidential election, and if Biden wins, policy will likely be redirected to support green vehicles. Within the automotive industry, we have Ford, Honda, VW, and BMW united under the promise to keep product plans as if the mandates were not weakened. And that means that around 32% of the anticipated green vehicle market, in this case full hybrid to full electric, should continue on. And while GM supports weakened rules for the full light vehicle fleet, it does support EV policy. So with that company added, we're at about 42% of electrified vehicle sales in 2025 that should not be affected by this rule change. Also consider that the automotive industry is very globalized. The US accounts for less than 20% of the global electrified vehicle sales that we expect in 2025. China and Europe have much more strict fuel consumption and CO2 emission rules, making it necessary for electric vehicles to be sold in high penetration in those markets, and those models can then be brought to the US. Canada had agreed to align its CO2 targets with the US, but after this revision, the country may move forward with its own, more strict rules, and that will require electrified vehicles be brought to the North American market regardless of the US mandates. The Wards Intelligence Cafe Performance Index measures the gap between the most recent model year and the future target for that fleet. While 2019 results have not been finalized by the agencies, we estimate them with our data. And we estimate that the 2019 fleet would need to improve 35% if the rules had not changed. But under SAFE, that gap is 15%. For the 6 years that I've run this index, the gap has closed about 5% on average each year. And that means that the 35% gap would be challenging, but the 15% is a near guarantee, especially for automakers like Honda, Mitsubishi, and Volvo, all at under 10%. Even though the fuel economy regulations were weakened, there's a lot going on to oppose them. So automakers will need to continue supporting electrified vehicle sales in the US until the outcomes are clearer. I can't conclude this presentation without mentioning the COVID pandemic, which is also affecting the market. But economic recovery is expected to happen relatively fast in historical terms, with the market getting back on track in just a few years. So while the pandemic has certainly affected the market, it's the more longer term regulations that will have a bigger impact on product plans. Our partners at LMC Automotive forecast sales of 3.6 million electrified vehicles in the US in 2025. This number does have an upward bias though, because if the looser regulations do make it through the court systems, automakers can more confidently pull back on their green vehicle supply. So thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Wards Intelligence 6-Minute Webinar. To make sure you don't miss future episodes and other Summer Festival of Automotive content, follow the link listed on this slide, also available in the description box below.